Hey everybody, now you can hear me. So didn't mean to cut the waiting stuff short, but I'm still making a few mistakes here and there with this streaming tool. But anyway, so what we're going to talk about tonight is the what we're coming up on in Picard. So first off, I'm a fan just like you, so I'm not privy to any of the stuff that happens behind the scenes. So all I have access to are the same things you might. Their YouTube channels, YouTube comments, Facebook, just any sort of social media. So I've been spending from about noon yesterday all of my waking time working on compiling data. And one of the things that I did yesterday was I rewatched episodes 1 through 6 of the of Picard season 3. And what I did is I went through and I collected breadcrumbs, and what I consider a breadcrumb. There were 5 criteria that I used to create a breadcrumb. So first one would be, knowing that writers place breadcrumbs throughout a story to provide hints to the viewer what will be revealed in a serial story arc. This is incredibly useful to bury things for a big reveal later on. And just a little forewarning, if it looks like I'm reading things off the screen, it's because I am. I took a lot of notes. I don't have the ability to memorize this volume of information. So it's in a Word document that's right in front of me. There's actually two. I'm going to be sharing those with you guys as soon as this is done. The stream is over with. I'm going to go. I'm going to share the link in the description. They're two big giant Word files. I'll probably have like PDF versions of it too if I can remember to do that. But either way, so yeah, so writers place these breadcrumbs. So number 2, anything that references events from prior series, films, or other canon lore is mentioned specifically for the purpose of indicating that this has something major to do with the story planned for this season. Number 3, any theme or subject that comes up repeatedly is done so on purpose, no matter how insignificant it may seem, may be a clue as to what is next. This is why beginning this analysis this late in the season was important, as the perspective gained from having watched the story develop a bit is helpful, even though going 6 episodes in all of a sudden was a royal pain for me. It was definitely a lot of work, and yeah, so there's a good chance there was some stuff that I missed. I'm not gonna lie, but I'd like to think I was very thorough. So 4, visual or audio clues in scenes or from characters that may indicate motives, history, or something else that may become significant later. Number 5, any patterns that have repeatedly come up that get resolved in a matter of an episode or two that can be taken off the list for what might be a larger story arc. For example, I am reasonably confident that the references to Farpoint have been resolved already by the birth of the baby space jellyfish in episode 304. So to give you an idea how many, and I'm not going through this whole list. I'm looking at this list here, and as much as I'd love to go through and share all 78 points, all 78 of these plus other things that I found, um, it's going to be much better if I just focus on a few of them. So some of these don't necessarily contribute to the overall story arc, but they are relevant things to know about the characters. So but yeah, so like a few things I want to point out before we dive into that. I want to talk about the Ready Room. So this past week, the Ready Room had hidden their, the next guest, and so this guest is so big that if they were to drop the name and tell you who it was, it would reveal something major about the story that's coming up in this coming episode. So this coming episode is called Dominion, and now good news for you watching this is I actually got lucky and paid attention to a friend of mine on Facebook that pays really close attention to things in Star Trek. So we're talking about Angelo, who tried to join us this past week on the very first live stream. There were technical difficulties, and eventually we'll have him on, I'm sure. But either way, he had caught that this person, that the actor, so it's Jeffrey Combs. And so, but prior to that, things were leading up to me. That would have been my first choice anyway. Um, so some of the things that I was thinking about, just based on themes from that the stories already presented. So if we take a look at, let's see here, there were well, I got five of them listed, but there were four major plot points in this particular season so far. Farpoint, that's been resolved. There's been several references to the Borg, definitely the Dominion. Um, one related, a bunch related to the Jack mystery. Plus, I filed one that's just called Picard's Life. Maybe insignificant, but these were all things that I noticed just kept coming up. And so, with this episode coming up of Dominion, I was thinking Jeffrey Combs, Remy Aubergenois, but also and Avery Brooks, but also because of the Dominion too, Tom Hardy, because he played Shinzon. Um, Remember in Nemesis, they were occupied with finding Picard because of his DNA, and they just stole Picard's dead body out of Daystrom. So that was a possibility. Of course, Alison Pill, because any sort of Borg thing, if anybody's going to come back as the Borg Queen, that's her. But as it turns out, it's Jeffrey Combs. So let me show you the clue, if you will, as far as how that came about. So let's see. Just give me a second here because I gotta find the. There we go. So take a look at that. If you take a look and see, he has he's sitting in a chair or a couch or something. He's got his arm out, and this would have been from. I'm not sure where this photo's from. So if somebody knows where this photo's from, please tell me. But either way, this is literally him. And so, yeah, that looks like the couch. That looks like a lot. Again, I don't know where this picture came from, but yeah, I would go with 100% certainty that this is going to be Jeffrey Combs, and I'm willing to be wrong about it. But yeah, so I just wanted to get that out of the way before we went more in depth with these breadcrumbs. So yeah, so that would make sense for the Dominion. Now the question is if he's coming back as Wei Yun. We don't know that. It's heavily implied that it's Wei Yun. So we know that at the end of DS9, when that last Wei Yun was killed, that was the last Wei Yun in the Alpha Quadrant. That doesn't mean that there weren't other Wei Yuns in the Gamma Quadrant. I'd like to think that the Dominion realized that Wei Yun was a very good Vorta, so they had a few sent from over to the Alpha Quadrant to take care of things, and so I don't think that was the last of them. And also, do you really think that the Dominion would have completely just given up on having a Wei Yun Vorta when they know that they generally work well? So yeah, but the reason I say that it's not necessarily guaranteed that it's going to be Wei Yun is because he also played Brunt, and Brunt was mentioned uh, by Sneed already in a previous episode. So yeah, that we still don't know, but who? Given that it's Dominion, I would be really surprised if it's not Wei Yun. It's got to be Wei Yun. Uh, Nothing else makes sense, and that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. So yeah. But anyway, so we're going to go through some of these breadcrumbs. And again, so there's 78 of them. Um, I'm going to focus mainly on the points, but I do have a few breadcrumbs that I kind of want to go over that weren't with the plot points, but these were things coming from the next generation that set us up. So in the opening scenes, the camera very specifically shows flowers and a mask with a flower painted on that mask. The only reference I could find that had anything to do with anything like this was um, season 7, episode 17, Masks, where Data was occupied by an entity and took over the ship. So this may have been foreshadowing for Data or that android that we just found at Daystrom, because again, it looks like Data, but other things have taken over the body. Because it's also lore, it's also before, and apparently Lal is in there somewhere. I'd really like to see Lal come out and play, but like they're going to be playing this android off kind of the way somebody would be if they had DID, I guess. But I don't know, faking mental illness on TV for entertainment. But it's an android, so it's not even that. It's just weird programming. And so, but either way, I think that was probably some foreshadowing. I wanted to include that and mention that because it kind of makes sense because of the direction it's going. So we know certain things from the trailer, we know certain things from previews, uh, where LaForge had said something like, "Damn it, Lore, why are you doing this?" So we haven't seen that part in the story yet, but I believe that's coming up. I know if you go back to episode 1 of Picard, for whatever reason they showed like an end footing thing, in footage of it, like a trailer that shows even more than what the actual trailer did. So I haven't found that at the end of any other episode, but I do remember seeing that at the end of episode 1, and I would have snipped that out and played that for us. I would have remembered that's where it was, but I just now remembered that, and well, you know where to go to find it now. So, but either way, so let's play that opening scene here. Uh, let's see here. Yeah, so we're gonna play this.
And that one is you, no other will do. I've lost all ambition, a world.
You see, there's those masks. We just saw the flower. Look real close. There was a flower on that mask. Here, let me go back to that. Yeah, if you go back right there, look right there. Look right at that. Look at his cheek. You'll see the. I'm pretty sure that's symbolic of a flower. I can't think of it being anything else.
I just want to be the one you love.
So there's the logs. It's going through 2 different logs.
Waiting for us to come out of hiding. I have no explanation for their special interest in me or this ship. We continue to prepare our defenses for the inevitable conflict.
So I didn't see what the. So I do know that the log that was being played was not the logs that were displayed on screen. So on screen there were 2 star dates. I didn't actually. Well, I didn't get around to looking to see what they were actually playing. It was something to do hiding from the Borg in a cloud somewhere. But so the star dates that they did mention, if you look really close on the computer display, they were 45236.4 and 41153.7. So just judging by what we saw in, as the opening scene, they were getting ready to be boarded and attacked. Um, and very clearly, the log that was playing the audio portion was about hiding from an enemy. So, for all we know, Beverly was listening to Picard's old logs to maybe find some sort of inspiration or hint or help or whatever in how to overcome the enemy that that they're facing. And so if so what I'm thinking is that these logs were some foreshadowing. So let's see here. So the first log that I want to talk about, actually no. So we're gonna talk. So the 41153.7 is about Farpoint. The 45236.4 is a little more cryptic in the sense that it doesn't seem to have anything to do with the story, especially at first. But the more we go through this, the more relevant this is. So I don't recall what episode this is from. I think it was Unification. Captain's Log, Stardate 45236.4. As I study the intelligence reports on Ambassador Spock's disappearance, I cannot help but feel a deeper, more personal concern about his mission, for I know this man through his father. It was barely a year ago that I shared a mind meld with the Vulcan Sarek. Now we must meet again as I attempt to find an explanation for his son's actions. So what's going on here? Why would this be relevant to season 3 of Picard? Well, we have a lot of questions about Jack, and this is Picard's son. And pointing this out in the very, very beginning, before there's any dialogue, I think they're definitely trying to say that, and because of the order in which they placed it, they showed these. When I was watching him, I was snapping pictures with my phone up against my computer screen, watching this, and the very first one was the 452, the one related to Spock, and so so right out the gate, they're kind of foreshadowing that somebody's son, we got to worry about what's going on with him, and then the second log has to do with Farpoint. So I think we're going to see a lot more of, we're going to talk about the Farpoint references. So the Farpoint themes, I'm not fully convinced that we're not going to see anything more related to Farpoint. Oh, I'm sorry, Brian. I wasn't didn't have the chat up for YouTube. And let me read real quick what you. Yeah, so yes, we're actually going to be getting to that point about the changelings cloning bodies. You know what? I didn't think about weaponizing neurotic syndrome. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So we're actually going to discuss. I didn't come exactly at that conclusion, but definitely we agree with certain things. So with that in mind, let's talk about the Farpoint arc. I want to talk about that real quick, because that was the first one that I believe that got resolved. So again, I'm going to be sharing this document with you, but I'm going to reference which breadcrumb that I haven't listed as. So the first reference for Farpoint was in episode 301. I have it called reference number 8. So Picard receives the communication from Crusher. He is shocked that it's coming to his Enterprise D communicator. As the computer analyzes the message, he cuts it off as it mentions the 41153.7 star date. He was shocked to find out that in order to open it, he needed a passcode. He thinks and provides Myriad. So yeah, there's that. And the next thing, of course, the next thing with that, which was what I was referenced, 9 was the first one related to the Borg. But anyway, let's focus on Farpoint. So the next Farpoint happened in episode 3. I called it number 37. This is when they discovered that the nebula is possibly a life form, as it has biological energy signatures. So the next reference was in the next episode, 304. Reference number 49, discussion of how to get out of the nebula, when Jack makes a comment about space babies. Very clearly, they make a reference to beings that thrive in the vacuum of space. So again, this was another reference to Farpoint, and I remember the first time I even watched it through, I immediately thought of those jellyfish from Farpoint. And then, of course, to make it even more obvious, in episode 4, towards the end, we see actual baby space jellyfish, reference number 51. Now, there was another reference that came out of episode 6. I'm considering it, so let me just read. So reference number 71. Daystrom Security identifies Riker and creates a custom security response just for him. It shows a holographic crow. Then they meet Moriarty, who challenges Riker with musical notes, to which Riker responds with the musical notes he whistled to Data many years ago for Pop Goes the Weasel. Moriarty responds with marvelous, just like Data did. And after that, Moriarty grants Riker access to the vault the Soong android was hidden in. It's like somebody wanted Riker to find this, or at least wanted someone from the Enterprise D crew to be able to access this vault without summoning any more security controls. So I'm considering this a Farpoint reference because the crow wasn't as important, but it contributed to the fact this is a Data callback. So the entire scene was about finding Data, or at least some part of him. But with the I'm sorry, my brain just blanked out for a second. No, so the thing is Data, or I'm going to call him Data. It's not Data. We shouldn't call him Data. It isn't Data. Data's in there. Data's home, but Data's not the only one that lives there. But the android, which I guess they don't even consider this an android anymore. The synth, we'll call it the synth, was Daystrom's revolutionary security system. And because Data's in there, when it saw that Riker and Worf were there, it caused it to glitch. It's almost like Data was crying out for help, because if you notice, that synth didn't give any resistance, to them asking for any information. It didn't, I'm not authorized to tell you that. It flat out recognized who was in the room with it: Riker, Geordi. Riker wasn't at that point, but Riker, Geordi, and Picard, and I believe Worf was there, and so it freely gave this information as far as who was stolen. And of course, so anyway, so that was the fourth Farpoint reference. I considered it a Farpoint reference because it didn't fit any of the other things that I had. So there were definitely some Borg references too. So let's talk about the Borg references. This is why I'm watching for Borg references. I think the Borg theme is not as strong in this season as it was in the last season, and maybe the extent of Borg involvement is limited to the fact that Picard's an XB, Seven's an XB, and everybody hates the Borg. Like, Shaw has every valid reason to loathe the Borg collective because, well, Wolf 359, he was there. So, but either way, so the Borg references starts episode 301, reference number 9. Crusher says Hellbird twice. Then, not to trust anyone at Starfleet. So, Hellbird is the virus that affected the Enterprise D navigation system. Let's talk about that for a second, because we eventually find out that the name of the ship is that's pursuing them is the Shrike, and that's not really a Hellbird. It's a small bird, and in episode 6, I believe it was. No, it wasn't episode 6. I think it was 2 or 3. Either way, it was when Vadic was introducing herself. She describes why the ship is called the Shrike. It's a Earth bird, and anyway. But Hellbird has nothing to do with that. Hellbird is a virus that caused the Enterprise D navigation system to have a 3 at the end of every single coordinate. And so I think because in that message, she sent coordinates that were messed up on purpose because she didn't want the wrong people to find her. She wanted him to find her. So then right after he gets that message, he goes to he meets with Riker at Guinan's bar, and they discuss, this transmission, and Riker's the one that's, hey, this was when you were taken, he describes him as incapacitated. And Picard looked at him like he was full of shit. What do you mean incapacitated? And they realized what they meant. And Riker, I love how Riker gives Picard all sorts of shit. But yeah, so anyway, Riker pointed out that the coordinates were messed up, so he strips out those last 3s, because those 3s either weren't invalid coordinates or they went somewhere wrong. But either way, it points to the Righton system. So, yeah. But Picard points out that he's never seen her so terrified ever. And I noticed that as they were leaving the bar, there was this mysterious stranger that was very clearly watching them, and he drops his Enterprise D model in his glass. So that's kind of and I think earlier in that scene, before Picard meets with Riker, Riker's having a go with the bartender about why nobody wants to buy the Enterprise D ones, and she's like, no, nobody wants the fat ones. And of course, he's offended because he was first officer aboard the most important Galaxy class cruiser that Starfleet ever had. So yeah, but anyway, so the next Borg reference is also in episode 1, reference number 15, where Shaw makes a comment about former ex-Borg with loathing in his voice. Again, I don't know that this was meant for foreshadowing, but because the Borg theme kept coming up, I documented it. So the next time we hear about Borg, episode 4, reference number 48. But this is when Picard and Jack were talking, and Shaw interrupts, and, this is the I'm a dipshit from Chicago talk. Well, anyway, Shaw had also looked at Picard, said, the real Borg are still out there, and they have a name for you, Locutus of Borg. The only Borg so deadly they gave him a goddamn name. And why would they say that I'm concerned about real Borg. This is why I'm thinking that could have been a foreshadowing clue to more Borg involvement, because, the real Borg. And so why would what's different from the Borg that we saw last season, what's wrong with those Borg? because they know that, we know at the end of season 2 of Picard, this new or different Borg collective sought provisional alliance with the Federation because they knew it was important to protect that wormhole, that transwarp conduit that just opened up. With that in mind, I don't know if we're going to see more of that or not. But anyway, yeah, so that does it with the Borg references. So now we're going to start getting into some of the more important things that are coming up, especially given that our next episode is called Dominion. There are definitely a good number of Dominion references that have come up over these last six episodes. So the first Dominion reference that I found was in episode 3, reference number 30. The nonverbal speech of the aliens on Vadic's ship may be that of the Breen. There's a YouTube link that I will, you know what? I think I can share that. Actually, I'm going to not put that in there. I'm just going to leave that in the Word document. You'll get that. Either way, it's just a video clip where you hear the Breen talking. Now, it's on Deep Space Nine, and they're talking through the mask. That helmet, rather, not a mask. But I thought the speech was so close and so similar that I feel like it's gotta be it. They're so close because they were alliance. They were allied with the Dominion. Sorry, I'm trying to figure out why we had a spammer. But yeah, so yeah. Either way, I'm gonna go with it's the Breen. I've seen some other people who think it might be the Alachi. So one of the reasons why some people are convinced that it's the Alachi, is if you go back to the first episode here, there was another scene where so there's another point where hold on. Either way, let me pull this up again because I just want to show it to you because I didn't find it where they had the three of them. But I do want to show this ship right here that's coming up. There's a better view of it from the front than another episode. I just couldn't remember where it was, so I didn't clip that out for this stream. But either way, that was apparently like an orange version of the Alachi ship. I'm not feeling it. I know that certain things that have been pulled from Star Trek Online that are now canon, for example, the Odyssey class or the Sagan class or things like that. So, but I don't think that they're pulling that story arc yet. I'm not catching any hints because again, we're looking at Dominion, and I know that the story, in DS9 for the Breen was that they required those helmets in order to breathe, anything off of the home world that they're from. But that doesn't mean that between the Dominion War and this point in time that technology didn't advance that let them wear a more subtle mask. I looked at all sorts of other aliens that have come up in prior Star Trek, and I really couldn't find anything that these aliens looked like. So, knowing that much, I just based on the speech, just if you want to call it that, the way they communicate, it sounds like the Breen to me. But I do know that Terry Matalas officially has said that those aliens are, and let me pull a picture of their ugly mugs up real quick. So officially they are changelings. So I don't know, what that, for what it's worth. They're changelings, but that's not, you know, I don't know. I mean, changelings are liquid goo people, and so who are they trying to replicate? Who are they trying to be? Unless they decided that this is their natural solid form that they want to assume, if they want to be quote unquote themselves among solids, that could be it too. But just judging from it sounds a lot like the Breen, and not exactly either. Um, I'm not convinced that they're not entirely something new. But anyway, so more Dominion references. Episode 303 again, reference number 38. This is when Worf and Raffi apprehend that target that turns out to be a changeling. The next reference was a little bit later when Jack was ambushed by a changeling on board the Titan, who put the Verterium leak back where it was because he didn't want the thing not to leak. Because how else is the Shrike going to find him in a nebula where sensors don't work? And the other Dominion reference was in reference number 43 and 303. Worf's explanation of the ending of the Dominion War referenced Odo. Now that they lost the war, a group of changelings were upset that they lost. The Federation is afraid to acknowledge their existence. And the reason they're afraid to acknowledge that this group even exists is it might provoke people into thinking we should start another war with the Dominion, just because these people are still hating on us, even though we whip their asses. So, yeah. And then the next episode, episode 4, there was one reference to the Dominion. So this is in the conversation between Shaw and Seven, where Shaw is explaining changelings. He shows Seven an example of a changeling's bucket on a pad, which also shows Odo's photo in the lower left corner. So remember, in Deep Space Nine, the Federation's first real encounter with a changeling was Odo. Nobody knew where Odo was from. They knew he was from a place far away, but he didn't even know. Cardassian scientists found him. And anyway, there was a lot of mystery. And of course, then we find out that he's part of these people that wanted to take over the Alpha Quadrant. And yeah, seriously, if you've not watched DS9, or if you have, it's a great time to watch it again. Season 3, I believe, is when the Dominion story arc started, so you can start there. But either way, so then after that, episode 5 was the episode with Rolaran. So the changelings have infiltrated Starfleet at the highest levels and have found on at least 12 starships, not counting the Titan. And that was, reference number 6. And then number 7 happened in episode 6, reference number 67. Worf briefs everyone on the intel about the changelings. He mentions that during the war, the Dominion delivered both might and deception, and Starfleet responded by creating a virus. So the episodes of DS9 where this happened: Homefront, Paradise Lost, Broken Link, When It Rains, and the Dogs of War. Card counters at Starfleet did deliver the cure, but that does not take away from the fact that they made the virus in the first place. So this is really significant because this kind of, this explains some of the deep-seated hate that the changelings have for the Federation. Yeah, they accepted terms of loss because it's war, it's politics. There was a time to stop the bloodshed. That doesn't mean that they don't hate the Federation still. The Federation, Section 31, had created a morphogenic virus that destroyed a changeling's ability to shapeshift. So What happened with the virus was it caused changelings to not be able to revert to of their liquid form to regenerate. They're not supposed to be able to hold themselves solid for very long, for more, but I guess for more than a day. I can't remember the exact amount of time, but essentially they have to go to sleep like we do, and when they sleep, they're goo. So yeah, and we're gonna see. I got a clip queued up here that we'll play here in a bit as we go into more context. So, um, I'm gonna go skip down to the single solitary Picard's life reference because it has to do with Jack, which is where we're going into next. Beverly had told, episode 3, reference 36. Beverly said that she encouraged Jack to find and meet Picard, told him how to, but that for some reason he decided not to. Now, we saw in episodes 2 where Jack was looking him up, like went to that bar where Kirk, or not Kirk, but Picard was basically ambushed by a bunch of cadets that wanted to ask him questions. He's this big celebrity, and why not ask him for his insight on things. And so, and in that scene, Jack was there, but he didn't know it was Jack, and Jack didn't introduce himself. But Jack asked about family, and Picard's response was the biggest fuck you that he could have said to someone he didn't know was a son. Oh, the only family I've ever needed was Starfleet. It's like he's trying to like you think about it. If you know that this guy is your dad, and you don't know how much he knows if you exist or not, like, I don't know, it feels kind of a big deal to realize that maybe you're an unknown to one of your parents. I don't know. It's one of those things. I can personally relate to a lot of the resentment that he has for Picard in my own life, which I'm not going to go into too much detail on. But I will say that in the absence of a person's biological father, finding your father later on in life doesn't come without certain confusion, emotions, resentments, things like that. Um, and so I can imagine probably very accurately how Jack feels about Picard. So obviously it's a little different because my dad's not a Starfleet captain, but yeah, the confusion of where the fuck were you? That's probably a big thing that's going through Jack's mind. And so so significantly, that's something to keep in mind when you're trying to understand Jack. So anyway, so let's talk about Jack. So there were certain references to the mystery of Jack. So some of the stuff I didn't consider a mystery of Jack were like the origin stories that Beverly was telling Picard, because that's not really a mystery. Those things make sense. Um, but the mysteries started in episode 3, reference 41. This is the first time we see one of Jack's hallucinations. Red branches with 7 saying, connect the branches, followed by a red door in a void. Next reference was in 305, reference number 52. Opening scene showing Jack's second hallucination. He enters the bridge to kill everyone using this TMP era phaser we've seen him with in episode 1. Bridge crew member says to him, I know what you really are. That's really puzzling. With that, he wakes up, his eyes glow red, and voices start mumbling. Female voice, much like that of Attic, says, Jack, come home. So we got 2 more references to talk about. I'm going to need to take a break here soon from talking. But yeah, so the next one is in 305, number 57. Jack had another hallucination. This time it's Beverly's voice saying, find me, hear me, connect us. Then in the hallucination, he walks to the transporter room, sees red veins as the crew beams away, shoots the officer, and then finds out he comes to and he realizes he didn't shoot anybody. And then the next final reference that we've seen so far, episode 305, reference 60. This is when the Titan's warping away and he beats the crap out of those 4 changelings. Kills them clearly because they're laying dead on there. And yeah, I'm going to leave you with that note. I'm going to take a break to catch my breath. See you in a few minutes. All right, everybody, I'm back now. So, one of the sucky things about having asthma, especially exercise-induced asthma, is evidently, as I learned very recently, just doing a lot of talking online like this can cause problems. So, I'm going to try and 10-minute break. It was a good breather. I think we'll be okay. So we were talking about Jack. Let's talk about some of these unresolved issues that are huge that we are now dealing with post episode 6. So back to Jack, the red door and the red veins. Um, and so in order to understand what's coming, we need to also take a look at have we seen these things before? So first and foremost, part of those hallucinations Jack has are the red eyes. And the only other time I've seen in Trek with red eyes is when Dukat was possessed by a Pa Wraith. So we're going to talk about that too. I think the Pa Wraiths might play something big with this. I'm not sure, but the clues are definitely there. But with the red door, so it's a wooden door. It's kind of an old school, something from like a old house. And we've seen this kind of door in two different places. So Picard's house, Chateau Picard, absolutely has these doors. I don't know if those doors are that door is meant to reflect that door. The other time that we've seen these doors, styled door, it wasn't red, but it was in Discovery. It's when the Guardian was creating these wooden doors for Giorgio and everybody else that was with her to go through. So the time traveler theory makes sense, only because Jack's half brother Wesley was definitely involved in some time traveling. I feel like Wesley was in some sort of secret society after he left the Enterprise for going whenever and wherever. But I think it's a more symbolic thing where visions of these doors, they're associated with a lot of things. And so I put an article in this Word file that just has to do with dreams about doors. So in Jack's case, these doors are red and closed. So until he goes to open the doors when he sees them, he can't move forward. And with the doors being red, shows that he's got a lot of pent-up anger and or passion. So again, I mentioned before he grew up without his father, and that can definitely be a lot of anger, especially right after meeting said father. So that's one possible explanation for the red door. So the red veins and branches, again, we're talking about a lot of symbology. Because I don't see anything else where red veins even come up in Star Trek. I went back to check to see if like the red matter stuff had anything to do with it from the 2009 movie, but I think it's safe to say that nothing Kelvin truly exists in this timeline. So veins typically symbolize lifeblood, strength, or resilience. Uh, it might indicate here that Jack will face a challenge with good character and ability. Red veins may also be a hint for a decision that he needs to make. It could also be a symbol of hopelessness. He certainly had a lot of hopelessness, being chased by, he's been chased by people for a long time. Maybe he's starting to fall apart. I just feel like nothing's ever going to get better. But in some interpretations, having red objects in your dreams might be a warning of impending danger. So some of these articles that I found, they're all, honestly, any sort of dream interpretation video is going to eventually get you into some sort of religious page. But I think that in the context of Star Trek, especially in the way it approaches religion and things like that, it may actually be of some value here. So this one here, says that having red objects in your dreams, let's see here, demonic enhancement. It could be it could indicate demonic enhancement. And so with that in mind, it might support the theory of Jack being possessed by a pot wraith. So that could absolutely, so that actually supports that theory. And the other enhancement especially has to do with why is it all of a sudden he goes from being normal dude to being able to like kill 4 changelings with his hands in less than 30 seconds. I mean, come on now. Jack's crazy, Jack's awesome, but since when did Jack get that special, right? So something had to happen. So there's something in him very clearly that he doesn't even know, he doesn't understand. And so let's just keep going on about Jack. So what's so another unresolved issue is what's the real reason that Jack is being pursued? So if I had the answer for that, this would resolve the entire story arc of this season. It honestly would. So we don't know. We don't really know yet. That's actually one of the big reasons I sat down and did this analysis, because I wanted to figure out what clues are there. What do we know? So here's what we do know about Jack. Aside from everything else that we just talked about, he's wanted in many systems, inside and outside the Federation, for all sorts of crimes. Most of these crimes are for things they're unproven. There's not a lot of evidence, circumstantial. All of it needs to be brought to trial, yet for some reason, Vadic is very clearly out to execute him. There's a reason why Picard said, episode 2, hey, you're supposed, what you've done, you deserve trial, not execution. And, you don't send, somebody doesn't send the most badass ship in the whole quadrant to go apprehend somebody that's just got to go to court. No, that's beyond that. So he's got these superpowers that he doesn't even understand. Possessed by a pot wraith, maybe. Maybe he's connected to the Borg. So come home. Maybe he's linked to something like that. I don't think the Borg would say come home. Do you? Do you think the Borg might say no? They would say things like come back to us, indicating plural. But either way, on the off chance that they're doing anything with Borg, especially because Picard's dead body would have Borg, using Borg technology against the Federation would be very strategic by the Dominion to catch them off guard. The whole fleet is in one place with possibly billions of civilians watching. So for some reason, they're leading up to this big event. At this point in the story arc, they're 2-3 days away, and we don't know why they're pushing that date so hard, but we know that they are. For some reason, they want this big thing done. They want Jack to be apprehended by then. Very clearly, they need to use Jack for something on that date. And who is they? That's a really... we got to talk about this hand monster. I've never seen anything like that in Star Trek. And, I'm not sure that we were meant to, so it does kind of look a bit like a pot wraith. But whatever it physically is, it's like it's a changeling. So if you look at the colors, the texture, the red, the white, all the way everything mixes together, looks just like the changelings do when they goofy. So, but what do we know about? We don't know his name, but what do we know about him so far? 10 points. Number 1, he identifies as being a different species than the changelings that answer to him. 2, he is a shapeshifter. but he's got these abilities over Vatic that can make her suffer severe pain on a whim. We don't know if he can do that to anybody else. 3, does appear to be made of the same kind of goo, so I already said that. 4, Vatic is terrified of him. 5, he's focused on carrying out this big attack. By Frontier Day, the whole fleet's supposed to be there. Rolarin and Geordi and probably a lot of other people were grossly against that. Rolarin was trying to find out the security implications, right? What they were planning on for security. Because she's in Section 31. She should know, right? No, hidden from her. And it's probably because number 6, what he's in charge of, infiltrated all sorts of layers of Starfleet, other institutions. Like a shadow government that's taking control of the galaxy, the galaxy for a singular purpose, which is to end the Federation. They want revenge. They're really sore losers. They lost the Dominion War and they're not happy. Jean-Luc's body was stolen from Daystrom. We don't know why. What about a dead corpse can, So it might be that they need Jack and that to make Jack into sort of a Locutus too. That's one of the theories. Now that Riker's on the Shrike, we can expect to get a more proper introduction in either 7 or 8. I think this coming episode we're going to get a name and we're going to understand way more because Riker's on the Shrike. So we should see more screen time on that ship. And I'm really excited to see that because that's a really cool looking ship that she's on. They give the bad guys really cool ships. Kind of reminds me of the Scimitar. But anyway, so yeah, but and the whole thing is we need to not forget how laser focused he is on doing whatever it takes to get his hands on Jack. Again, we know Jack's got these special abilities and that Mr. Hand Monster wants him. Why? So I think we're going to learn more in this coming episode. That's going to explain why. Yeah, definitely. I'm not going to go through all 78 points. So at the end of season 2 of Picard, actually, no, we're not going to talk about that yet. I'm going to play a video. So one of the weirdnesses about Jack and the Hand Monster, I'm going to play this video because his voice changes, and I'm not so sure I like that.
You heard Ring 1, Jack Crusher. He's broken a number of laws, both inside and outside Federation space. There is a sizable bounty on his head, and we are taking him.
It was never about the portal weapon. You just wanted to keep Starfleet spinning.
It was misdirection from the very beginning. To distract us from
something else being stolen from Daystrom. Something more dangerous. Something more valuable.
That's all I know! Now let me go!
Okay, so that's not withdrawal.
His face... it moved. There's a changeling on board. Starfleet spinning. There's a changeling. There's a changeling. There's a changeling. There's a changeling.
All right, so now I have hearing issues. I'm willing to admit and accept that just maybe I was overreacting or heard the wrong quality. But the truth is, I feel like I wasn't the only one. Jeff had noticed the same thing too when he had listened. and it was just so subtle. Like if you listen to the way it happens with Vatic, it's also like subtle, almost like a sneeze. And I don't, with everything that we've seen of Jack so far, with the way he has these special abilities, his eyes get red, all these weirdnesses, plus they're like clearly after him and he can, well, kill 4 changelings with his bare hands. I don't know. Is this Jack actually the original Jack? That's what I'd like to know. Like, so when he was telling, and maybe he could be, because he finally felt it was relevant to talk to his mother about how he feels, but she had reminded him that, when you were a kid, when you were younger, you had these problems. You had these nightmares, you wouldn't sleep. I can tell when you're not sleeping. And he's like, yeah, I'm having nightmares again. This was right. So at that point, she decided to diagnose him with Irumodic syndrome. Is it? It could be, but I think he's got something else going on. If it's not Irumodic, he's possessed by something, or even worse for him, Irumodic and being possessed. That would suck. And because Picard's only way out of Irumodic syndrome was dying and becoming, well, an android. So let's see here. So what can we expect from this story arc? So this part I wrote before I discovered that it was going to be Jeffrey Combs coming up. I still think Shinzon might have something to do with this. So we know that this faction of changelings came out of the death of the Dominion. There's this huge focus on Picard. So remember, Shinzon of Remus was a Dominion commander and Picard's clone. And so most of the references in the story have been to TNG, they've been to the other movies. In a weird way about Data, there were 2 references to Nemesis, but they're more of a reference to Data himself than the movie. But they did mention before, they, in this last episode, there were 2 references that could have been taken as a reference to Nemesis in regards to Data being killed twice. Picard said, I watched Data die twice. First time was on Nemesis. And in the video clip where Soong is telling and describing what's in the android body, there's B4, and B4 significant because before Data went off and heroics and sacrificed himself, he downloaded his entire memory core into B4 in the hopes that it would help B4 be a more complete unit. And as far as we can tell, it never did. I don't think it ever did. There's all sorts of stuff in what is it, like in non-canon sources, I guess beta canon might be the word, but comic books, where they kind of suggested that at some point B4 did become a complete person, but it was because Data's memory, Data's essence just decided to take over the body. And that just didn't seem like something Data would do because he's not a violent person. But either way, but having a Nemesis reference would be a nice little wrap up to, it would satisfy the purpose of this season, wrapping up the whole story of season 7. So it's titled Dominion. So I don't think we're going to get an appearance by another Shinzon clone, but they might mention him, and this is significant, especially because now we know we're probably going to see Wei Yun, which is a Dominion clone. Guess who else? Shinzon was a clone. Who, the Dominion were really good at cloning. But yeah, so they might be trying to steal this dead body of Picard because they thought maybe that would help them recreate a Picard clone. Now that's not going to happen in less than a month. So I don't think that that's going to be their goal for Frontier Day. By Frontier Day, they should be able to get nanites out of dead Picard and put into Jack's body. So that's what I'm thinking, because they can get him assimilated by Frontier Day. Then, Locutus 2 can be a royal pain in everyone's ass. And that would make more sense, because why would Shaw have brought up Wolf 359? That would satisfy what my theories are, why they have so many Borg references in this season so far. So that's what I'm expecting. So that's theory B. So an alternative possibility. Okay, by the way, and it's also possible, I think I already mentioned that, about Jack possibly being possessed by a pod wraith and doesn't know. He's got something in him that he doesn't know about. He went somewhere, slept with someone, caught something. I don't know. But there for a bit I was thinking, and I can dispute this real fast, but that this Jack is a changeling that defected and wants nothing to do with the Dominion Uprising anymore. We haven't really seen Jack do anything weird that would mean that he would have to revert to a gelatinous state. But he could have been doing it off camera, because we only seen him for certain parts. If he is in fact a defected changeling, his people would be after him, because that's treason. But but here's the whole thing. What denies that, but puts that out the door? So when you were in that chamber with that Berterion gas or whatever it was called, we know the one changeling was just fine, and Jack just about died. So I don't think Jack's a changeling, but it would have made for a really interesting theory. Other interesting theories that I've read in the comments that I thought were kind of neat, possibly, were like if Armus was involved somehow with this. Armus was a minor villain. Armus is literally limited to the one planet. And I don't think that anybody would have been dumb enough to put Armus on a ship. I don't even know why they'd want to write Armus back in. That was kind of like a bullshit alien that had too much power. But either way, I don't think Armus, I think we can rule that out. Either way, so I'm going to upload these. Well, actually, after the end of this, I should have a link. It's already uploaded. It's a OneDrive link. I'll share this in the description of this video of everything that I have. It's got the logs. It's got a bunch of pictures. And let's, you know what? Why don't we watch one more thing together? Let's watch the actual trailer for the next episode. And then we'll watch one of the trailers for the whole series, just to see if we can pick up clues. So here's this.
Frontier Day is almost upon us. We are running out of time. Report.
The associates of Jean-Luc Picard were unexpectedly firm in their loyalty in him. I don't anticipate them breaking the time we have left.
They must. Do not fear me. Your physiology is not as special or complex as you believe. You are by nature malleable, made Their kind is beholden to a singular flesh. Dismember one from the other. Do whatever is necessary. The hour of Starfleet's fall nears. We must have the boy. Or you and your kind will find your own existence meaningless.
Yeah, so I don't think there's that much that we can add to him. Like, we can very clearly see that Vatic is terrified of this hand monster. And I would be too if he could magically make me start having problems with my morphogenic matrix not being able to stay solid. That would probably really freaking hurt. Like, if we've seen changelings get injured, they kind of jello up a little bit in those areas where they get hit, and we saw her completely jelloing up all over, so that had to hurt. And yeah, so let's just see if there's anything else. Can't remember which one of these files was which. Season 3 official trailer. Okay. Let's watch that one.
We fight or we die.
We've seen that. Yeah.
Admiral on the bridge. And Captain on the bridge.
You will probably find this inspection boring for the likes of you two.
Boring?
Well, we won't be blowing things up. Taking or engaging in fire, crash landing expectedly or unexpectedly.
Those were the days.
Those were the days.
There is something coming.
Battle station.
There's the
Some
Enterprise
kind of
F.
attack. And Starfleet could be the target.
There's a darkness. An all-consuming darkness.
So let's talk about that real quick. So first, the Enterprise F, showing up with a bunch of other ships. That's very likely the procession that's heading to for Frontier Day. But if we see it in episode 7, that's going to be interesting too. So then the fact that Deanna Troi is on there. There was another. So when I talked earlier about there being kind of a preview that happened at the end of episode 1, Deanna was chewing Riker out for leaving at the drop of a hat to go help Picard. This trailer doesn't show that, and but in this trailer, she's talking about there's a darkness because this is after, this is probably going to happen in episode 7 coming up, where she's going to tell there's a darkness on the ship after chewing him out for why'd you leave us out of the blue to go help Picard.
It is getting stronger.
Come on, that's good.
Trust no one. Jean-Luc Picard.
We will have vengeance.
You and I have traveled to the far reaches of space. But something's different now. This is the end, my friend.
Geordi!
Such pathetic old warriors.
I, too, was once irrational, violent.
Is anybody you know still the person you knew?
This is life or death.
It's always life or death, Jean-Luc. When has it not been?
With each ticking moment, I will take another piece of you.
Battle stations!
Survival. Human nature, pal. We fight or we die.
Hold it! Gun it!
I need you. All of you.
We're with you. Always.
Engage. Will, are you enjoying this?
Of course not. Are you?
All right, so that's I don't think there's a whole lot more that we haven't seen. So most of those were clips from the episodes we've already watched. Either way, I had a lot of fun doing this. This took a lot of time for